Hello and welcome. This is Christina Hills with the Website Creation Workshop, and welcome to our October expert call, Hack Prevention versus Hack Repair. And I am thrilled to have Jim Walker here, who's going to be teaching us and talking with us about the things we can do as business owners to help prevent our sites from getting hacked in the first place, how to figure out if you have been hacked, and then what to do if you have and how to repair your site. So let me just introduce Jim. I've known Jim for a while. He lives in San Diego with me, and I've met him at multiple WordPress meetups. And he has been a website security expert and website hosting service provider for over 16 years. He lives in San Diego, California, and his current passion is everything WordPress, just like me. He manages HackRepair.com, a malware cleanup and website security services company, and HackGuard, a WordPress security and WordPress management service. And he's the guy who I am hiring to help me in one of my accounts that I think has been compromised. And so I wanted to invite him today to teach all of us what are the things that we can do as business owners to prevent our sites from being hacked. Now, we are business owners. We are not designers and webmasters. But I know there are a lot of little things we can do to protect ourselves. So what Jim is going to do is he's going to talk about that. And we'll interact together and be taking your questions. So, Jim, welcome to the call.
Hi, Christina. Jim Walker here with HackRepair.com. So thank you for having me on. I'm loving this. I'm like talking about security. And where do you like to start?
Well, I want to start with sort of the rise that I've seen in hacker attacks and sort of problems like that on the Internet. Is the rise in malware or hack attacks, is it just that I'm more observant of it, or has it gone up? Because to me it feels like it has gone up. And would you say they're attacking WordPress sites more or just sites in general?
Well, I think that in general hackers have always been around, but content management systems like WordPress and Joomla, they all have their inherent security issues that don't necessarily relate to the software themselves, but relate to things like people using over-easy passwords and installing stuff and then forgetting to update the stuff. Mm-hmm. And so hackers are taking advantage of this. I mean, really, that's the reason why you see an increased rise, is because folks have their web designer design their site, or they design it themselves, and then they think that it will they'll think that it doesn't need to be updated, right, or that it's like cement, that you just, pour it and walk on it. But the truth of the matter is that a website's a living thing. And if you're not constantly, at least monthly or quarterly, reviewing, making sure your scripts are updated and such, you may find yourself with the problems a lot of people are finding today, in that their websites are being compromised.
And that's exactly what happened to me, which I'm embarrassed to admit, but in one of my web hosting accounts, I put up a site that I kind of forgot about. It was a small site, something I wasn't really paying attention to, and I wasn't keeping the plugins up to date, and that is how I believe my site got hacked into. And so once that happened, I said to myself, oh my gosh, I've got to pay more attention to this, and now I'm much more diligent on getting things updated all the time, and not building sites and forgetting about them. If I'm going to build a WordPress site, then I'm going to keep it active, and if I decide I don't need it anymore, I'm going to delete that WordPress site. And so, it's actually good. It kind of makes us sort of tighten the ship up. So I know, Jim, that you have this sort of great formula for keeping for hack prevention. Should we go through that formula?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I try to keep it simple. I don't expect that anyone knows anything other than maybe how to log into WordPress, for example, and add their content and their pictures. And that's what it should be. I mean, in truth, that's what the Internet presented. It gave us this nice medium. But the downside is that we forget that, just like in our own homes, there are things we have to do to keep them secure, and you can't just hope that someone won't find the key under your mat. And so you have to do things to prevent. Maybe not put the key under the mat. Maybe put it under the rock. I mean,
Right.
I mean, if you have to put the key somewhere, do some things to do some forethought. And so that's why I came up with a nice little acronym called BUMM, which is B-U-M-M. And it's very simple. It is the preventative side of working with your business. And this has nothing to do per se with WordPress or Joomla or any other specific content management system. It's pretty much everything you do on the Internet. For example, we can start with backups. And I put backups first because it really is the most important thing. No matter how good you are with updates and maintaining your site, you're still going to have a potential issue where if your host has a problem, or you have some security issues, or maybe you just upgraded WordPress or Joomla in a way that you need to recover back to an earlier backup. So even without the security concerns that we may have, backups are really, really important. And I'll just add one thing to the word backups is don't trust your hosting company. Don't get me wrong. It's not that the hosting company is bad or that they have bad backup systems, but it's going to be Murphy's Law. It's tried and true problem with the Internet and anything you do online is that the moment that you trust that something's going to work, it doesn't. And so it's really good for you not to trust the hosting company to do the backups and maintain your own. The next item on the list is updates. Now, with WordPress, the concept of updates are things like updating of your plugins. So you would want to do that at least once a month or once a quarter at the very least. Just keep things updated and tidy. You don't have to be crazy about it. You don't have to click the button the moment an update comes out. But certainly be mindful that updates are very important.
And what I do, just to interrupt for a second, is I get myself and my team in this rhythm of once a week. Once a week we're doing updates. And if you just make that kind of part of your process flow, it really doesn't take long.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, it's sort of even a second thought after you get used to doing it after a while. And the third item on the list is maintenance. And in maintenance, again, it crosses all the different types of things you're doing online, be it with Gmail or your email accounts, or be it with WordPress or Joomla. Maintenance are the things that just periodically clean stuff up. This has an important aspect in security, not as great as backups and updates, but maintenance is important. In the example you mentioned before where you had an old WordPress website that you'd forgotten about, updates were never a thought because you forgot about it. But had you considered the maintenance aspect of it, you probably some months ago you would have logged into your website and looked around and said, wow, there's an old blog that I had back in 2008. I don't really need that anymore. So the maintenance aspect of it is to just simply remove it so it's no longer a security issue.
Yeah, and the way it had happened to me is I think it was either a site idea I had that I was testing out or it was a test site, and I can't remember which. But I keep a spreadsheet of all my sites, and I didn't bother to put it in. I was like, oh, this is just a little test. I'll install WordPress and throw a couple of things in there. And so it didn't get in my spreadsheet, and I forgot about it. And then when I was looking in my hosting account, actually going into the file manager and seeing what are the files, I go, oh my gosh, what's this folder? And I look in the folder, oh my gosh, this is a WordPress site. Now I remember, 3 years ago installing that. Oh my gosh, I forgot about it, and it was just sort of dangling out there. Before we go on, I just want to ask you this question about backups. So I know hosting companies like WP Engine do backups. And I know they're a dedicated, WordPress site, and there's, Bluehost also does them. So I think having those backups are good, but you also want, I think your point is, you also want your own backup.
It'll be
backups.
Yeah, it will be the time that you really need it. You'll find that the hosting company only has last night's backup, and you updated something last night, and then the next day you find out something's not working, and of course that backup is no longer useful.
Right.
So you need to keep that backup, preferably a backup that is goes back several days, not just last night. See, that's the thing with most hosting companies. They're more than happy to manage or maintain daily backups for you. But if you call them on the phone right now, call your hosting company for your website and say, do you have a backup from last week? It's probably 90% likely that they'll say they don't. And so it's important that you have some backup of your website, either automatically being done or periodic.
Okay. And then let's go through monitor, and then I want to go inside a WordPress site and look in there.
So monitoring is the last, and I would say to a certain extent the least important of the four. And the reason for that is that it is very helpful, not essential, but it's very helpful for you to monitor your website. There are many no-cost and also for-cost services out on the internet that will do things like monitor. Pingdom and a few others are examples of monitoring services. Now, most of the monitoring services will just monitor your uptime and downtime, and that has some marginal usefulness. But for security, you want to look around for services that monitor for content changes. And in the article that you have on the screen, I do have some recommendations on services you can try for monitoring.
Okay. Should I scroll down?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Should we go through these?
No, I think we've covered all those.
Okay.
I think monitoring is the only one that's kind of very specific.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's actually the longest part of the article, because it's the one that's most complicated. People don't fully understand why it's important. So I cover that pretty well. The first one I mentioned is changedetection.com, and it's a free service. I use it for every website I have. Fantastic service. So it's as simple as typing in your website address and your email and hitting next, and you're done.
So do you put in, when it says page address, do you put in the top of your site?
Or whatever page you want to monitor.
Okay.
Now,
but then if you post a blog post, wouldn't it send that to you?
Yes, it would send you a daily log of what's changed. But you see the examples of the updates below?
Okay.
See where it says, folks, that's exactly what the updates look like. So when you get your daily, you don't have to look at it every day, but at a very quick glance, it'll show you the changes that were made on the website. So obviously, if you've been compromised, it's probably not going to say something that you wrote. It's probably going to say something not so good. And so it's very easy service to use. It'll send you your alerts every day. And it's just another way in which you can monitor the site sort of hands-off. And it gives you some very quick at a glance information about what might have changed on your site.
So you can, so do you need to sign up, or can you just put it in here and send alert too?
Yeah, you just put it in there and hit the send alert.
Oh, very cool. And
so
then you'll know. So then if you've done a blog post and you see it come through, you'll be like, yeah, okay, I know I did that blog post today.
Exactly.
But if you all of a sudden see some weird stuff, now does it also, this change detection, if people post comments like normal comments, does it send you all of that as well?
It may, and then if you do create an account, you can edit you can edit certain aspects of what it monitors. You can make it more or less sensitive. It's one of those things. There's not a lot of features. You pretty much check one or two boxes. But you may find some features will work better than others. It's very easy to test. I mean, you do what you're doing here. Create a page address, enter the email, update your website, and then later that day you'll likely will see an update alert. You'll pretty quickly get an idea of the different setting options and which one works best.
Right. Well, this is cool because this will let you know right away whether what one needs to.
Exactly.
Oh, I see. Set alert.
Now, right. So you can send it every day. You can send it if there's a sizable change. You can only send an alert if text has been added or removed. It's very simple. I mean, it's one of those things you just kind of play with. Depending on the type of site, you may want to try different things. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. That's it. There is no payment. It's as simple as that. And
that's
now
very cool.
Yeah, and you're done. And you'll will now get these alerts whenever you need them.
Okay, and I'll do that later. I'll do this part later. Okay, cool. ChangeDetection.com. I think I'll keep a little list of that.
So that pretty much covers monitoring. There are some other recommendations on the page, but that's probably one of the nicer ones.
Okay. All right, ChangeDetection.com. And I'm going to send these links out to everyone at the end as well. So let's go in and let's just talk about backups for a minute. So let's go into a WordPress site. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on backups. Just everybody knows that they need backup. But I like you've mentioned WP Up, which I've played with, and Backup Buddy, which I like a lot. The great thing about Backup Buddy is, you know this, Jim, but I'm just letting everybody else know, is that it takes the whole thing as a nice package and backs up your entire site, WordPress, every single thing you would need, and then you can store it to, I didn't know it would go to Google Drive. I did not know that. Or Dropbox. Oh, that is cool. And the thing about if you are corrupted and you need to recover from a backup, there are many people like yourself who know how to work with Backup Buddy. So you just sort of hand them the Backup Buddy zip file, and they can get your site back in shape. BackWP Up, I was just wanting to go in and install that. And let's BackWP. And how would you say this is different from, is that this one? Yeah. How would you say this is different from Backup Buddy?
Well, this is the most simplest of all of them. Backup Buddy can be a bit complicated for a first-time user. But for someone who's never used a backup plugin, I think this is a great place to start.
And what would be, they have a free and a pro version. Okay, and once you've installed it, you can see on the left-hand side it is here. And I think the way it works is you have to start a backup job. Is that correct?
Correct. You can just click on Add a New Job.
Okay, and we'll just call this like backup. And would you just leave those as they are?
Yeah, leave that as they are. I sometimes will not actually do. I sometimes won't do a full backup. I'll just back up the database. So this is an example of a very easy-to-use program where you can just maintain daily database backups and or file backups. And I'll sometimes even, a little trivia, but I'll sometimes break them out. I'll create a job for database-only backup, and then I'll create a job for file-only backup.
Okay, so let's just pause for a second. So file-only backup would be your themes and your plugins and your uploads?
Correct. Everything on your website.
Okay. And the database is just your content, so that everybody knows that.
Yeah, and since WordPress is all content is in the database, then if you do, oftentimes when you do make some errors or mistakes on your website, simply reverting the database is all that's needed. You don't necessarily have to revert all the files.
Right, if you have a problem. All right, so let's just try this. Backup to folder, backup sent via email. So you can pick any one of these if you have these services. And then click Save Changes, and I'm assuming that will run the backup.
Mm-hmm. Now, if it's a small site, sending to your email is okay, but if it's anything more than a few megabytes, you definitely do not want to send it to your email account.
Right. Okay. So then to see how, if this says run,
mm-hmm.
so I come, where would I find? Maybe I come over here to Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
It has not yet run. So how do we make this run?
Oh, put your cursor right over the word backup, and there it is.
Ah, run now. Yeah, I'm liking this one better. I was using WPDB backup, but I think this is a better one.
It's just simple. It gives you a very nice little graph of when it's done. On a small website like you see it here, it's just going to go rip through it really quick, and then when it's done, it's going to tell you it's done, and then it's going to show you the log in the, it's going to show you the backups in the backup list.
Right, and I don't have Backup Buddy installed here, so we don't want to go through that, but this then sends you a file. So you can have Backup Buddy, you can have this, you can have your hosting company. You also do backups. You know, you can never have too many backups. Although if you've got backups from a year ago, you probably want to delete those. So, and is this the log?
That's it. And that log just tells you what happened. It's sort of geeky, but it'll tell you some things about whether it's too big to send by email, that sort of thing.
Got it. Okay. Well, we don't want to, we don't need to, we can move on from this. What are the things we can do inside our WordPress accounts, sort of the simple things that maybe we haven't thought of?
You mean security-wise?
Yeah, like settings or...
I would say go to users real quick. I think users, a lot of folks will set up multiple administrative accounts.
Right.
And I would recommend that probably 90% of all folks who have their own websites have one administrative account, and then set the others to editor. Now, the editor level has the ability to do virtually everything on the website. Certainly can add posts and edit. The administrative account allows you to do the higher level things like install plugins and such. But the downside is that a lot of folks, they'll give the administrative account to their friend or whatever, and then their friend's email address will get hacked or something will happen, and then you've lost control. So I always say, keep the administrator accounts down to a minimum because you can control your own account, but it's sort of hard to control the cats running about. So,
right. And if they don't need to be administrators, so I can change this person to an editor.
Right.
And let's hit update user. So just your idea is, in general, limit the number of people who have administrative access.
Very, very important. A lot of times when I go into a project and someone will have 10 administrative accounts, and some of the people in the list, they don't even know who they are. And so, because it may have been 2 or 3 years ago. And administrative account, username and password is one of the most common ways in which people are hacked.
Right. In fact, actually, we should have started with that, which is username and password. So why don't I just add a new user? So I'll call this, assistant, and then I'll put support at website creation workshop, and Joanna H, and website we can leave blank. Now here you can type something in and it will tell you if it's weak or not, which is really handy. So you want to make sure that you pick something that is super, and I don't know if this doesn't have a password generator, I don't think. Oh yeah, I'm using LastPass. So LastPass has a password generator that's making strong passwords. So a good idea, and Jim, you might have a spiel about passwords, but a good idea is to check that your password is strong.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one way that will tell you. And then decide what level access your assistant needs. For example, or whoever's working with you on your site, if they don't need to be an administrator, right, if they don't need to be adding plugins and changing themes, I would recommend editor or author. So editor will allow this assistant to edit all the pages and posts on my site, even the ones I've created. Author, they can only edit their own. So I'm going to do editor and click add new user. Thank you.
And that's a great point about LastPass. LastPass and 1Password and other programs, everybody should have these on their computer. Not only because for what you're doing here, but all of us, everyone has 10 or 20 or more passwords for everything from their email accounts to their website to PayPal or whatever. And those password programs are just indispensable because they're going to force you to be smart. They're going to force you to set your passwords properly, and they're going to encrypt them. And they're going to encrypt them for you in a way that you don't have to think twice about it. And then when you are going to a website and you need to enter your password, you're not having to manually type it. The LastPass, for example, will auto-enter it for you. And so even if someone's watching your monitor, let's hope that never happens, but if someone hacks your computer and they're literally watching your screen, they can't even see the password that's being entered. So it's a double, triple level of security.
So which I use LastPass. I was using RoboForm. I think I stopped using that. So LastPass, and what was the other one you mentioned?
1Password.
1Password.
Mm-hmm. Literally the number 1.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is this it?
That's it.
Okay, so 1Password takes you to Agile Bits, and LastPass, so I guess they're both similar, just pick one of them.
Mm-hmm. Depending on your computer type. I don't have a particular preference. It really depends on what you like better.
Okay, and so for people who don't know how these work, this is software you download, and then it's a place to store all your passwords so you don't have to remember them. So you download the software on your computer, and I think they have a free version of LastPass, and it just makes it easier filling out forms. Like you saw, that was already installed, and when I wanted to change the password, see, it's asking, do I want to, LastPass detected a password change for this domain. Do I want to save it? So I can say confirm, and then it's asked, please select which you want these to change to. Actually, I want to change it for something else, so I think I'll just hit close. I won't do that right now. But when you type in a password, it saves it into a database. And I don't recall if I have a training on that. I might have done a video on LastPass. I don't remember. But here's the important thing to remember: is the concept is a way to memorize your passwords and have cryptic passwords. Okay, where do we want to go to next? Let's come back in here. So we talked about making sure you give your assistant only the access that your assistant needs, like editor access. And we talked about having a strong password. What are the other things in here? I think there's something in settings.
Yeah, we can try. There's really not that much in settings, security-wise, other than maybe membership-related.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about membership real quick?
Yeah, let's talk about this because I don't talk about this very much, but I think this might be a key thing. People need to make sure that this is not checked. So, Jim, why don't you explain what this, and this is not a plugin, this is just inside WordPress settings general. What is that membership?
Well, if you're going to have an active blog where you have a lot of folks who are going to be commenting. There's lots of ways in which you can lock down the commenting, and I don't think we have enough time to really go into the concept of commenting today. That's an entire different discussion.
Yeah, let's not cover commenting.
But like you said, the just keeping the anyone can register box unchecked will prevent a lot of unwanted random bots and other things from going to your website and posting on your articles.
Right, because I don't even know why WordPress allows this, but if you had this checked and if you had this checked, then anybody could register and become an administrator.
Wow, isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. So by default, this is off, so you want to make sure that it stays off, having people register. And this, you know, to me, I haven't seen this much. To me, it's kind of an old-fashioned way to use WordPress, where people would register so they could leave comments. But I don't see folks doing that anymore.
There are so many plugins and things to manage comments on your website that, like I said, that's a totally different discussion. I think that's about all we need to do on the membership stuff. We can jump on over to plugins real quick.
Yeah, let's jump on over to plugins.
And we alluded to this earlier that keeping your plugins updated is really important. And did you like to chat on that real quick?
Yeah, and I've talked about this before, but it never hurts to keep talking about it. Looks like I have got a plugin update, and you see that here and here. So you just select them all and update the plugins. Now, it's a good idea to do a backup before you update plugins, but I don't always do that. If I've got a regular backup plan, I'll just go ahead and update the plugins.
Yeah, I would say that nowadays it's not something to be so scared about. But if you do maintain regular backups, like we chatted on before, it's not something I would tell people to worry over. Just do the updates as once a month or so, or once every other week, whenever you feel like doing them, and that's usually more than fine.
And there's this plugin which I used to recommend, which I'm not recommending anymore, which is the WPDB Backup, and by Austin Matsuko. I used to recommend this. I'm not anymore, because in doing my research on how my site might have gotten hacked, an article with this plugin came up, and so that is why we are no longer recommending it. We are not putting it into student projects. So
can I add something to that as well?
Yes.
Note in the right column, look at the last update date.
That's over as a year ago.
So this is a security tidbit that we wouldn't have thought of until you'd gone to this page. When you do install your plugins or brand new plugins, it's usually a good idea to look at what the plugin is compatible to. In this case, it's 3.6.1, and the last update was a year ago.
Right.
So what an update means is that it's the last time that the developer of the plugin literally did anything to it. So with all of the things that are going on with WordPress and other content management systems, I would say that if someone comes out with a cool plugin and you go and you notice that it's well over 6-9 year old, probably steer clear and find something that's current.
Because also, Jim, if they are keeping this up to date, it would say last updated, and wouldn't they change this to compatible up to 4.0?
This person probably hasn't even logged in since September of 2013.
Right. So perhaps in the day, I mean, when I first discovered it a few years ago, it seemed like a good plugin, but now this is the clue. It has not been maintained. Let me just bring up another one. Go to WordPress. I was going to bring up the iThemes security. iThemes security, just to contrast. So look at iThemes security. It says compatible up to 4.0 and last updated September 17th, which was about a month ago. So they are keeping this up to date whereas he is not. And sometimes seeing these logos is another tip-off to me that this plugin author is paying attention and taking pride in their plugin and keeping it up to date, whereas this person, it kind of looks like, now he's got no warranty. Well, I don't blame him for that. But, he hasn't given a lot of love to this plugin. And with the let's bring up the back WordPress.org. I like to look at things here. Back WP up. And so, again, they've kept theirs up to date. They've given it love. It's got a logo. So these are just the little things that we can look for, not being coders or programmers ourselves. All right, so where are we? We are, and I just want to, I'm keeping like a little list of places that we've been to, and I'm going to, so that I can send this out, I want to come here to Jim's site, add that to my note, and let's see, I had LastPass, and this was 1Password, which is then Agile Bits. Just add that in here. Okay, so we were talking about plugins, and we were looking at these plugins, but let's come back over in here, and I updated a plugin. Let's come back in here. Was there something else that you wanted to look at with plugins?
Not really. I will add I guess we can go over one item. At the very top, you'll notice how it says active plugins and inactive plugins.
Mm-hmm.
So click on the inactive plugin list. Now, a lot of people don't think about this, but in many cases, as the person works on their website, they'll add new plugins and they'll forget about them.
Right.
So back to the original comment about noticing how old a plugin was and noticing it hadn't been updated for a year. It is something I've learned a lot with folks who are working on WordPress over time, is that they will install a plugin and they won't delete it. So the plugin, and there have been very many cases of instances where a plugin that is not active can actually be hacked through.
Now, let me ask you a question about that, because I definitely want to talk about this more, because I'm guilty of not, as you can see, I haven't deleted these plugins. If a plugin is inactive, but it has an update, won't you still be notified if it has an update available?
Correct. But let's just say that some of these plugins that you have in the inactive folder haven't been updated in 3 years. You'll never see an update. You'll never have assumed. You'll never think twice about them. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Bing, bing, bing. I want to highlight that, because I didn't make that connection, and you just made that connection for me. So I want to highlight that for everybody on the call. So if you've got plugins that are inactive and the person is keeping them up to date, like iThemes Security, you'll get a notice, right, that there's an update. So even if it's inactive, you'll get a notice that there's an update. But if someone, and I'm not saying, I'm just going to use him as an example, don't mean to beat up on him, but he's a good example. He may have abandoned his plugin and not keep it up to date. So if you've got a plugin you're not using and it has become abandoned, you may not even realize it. It's now here keeping you vulnerable. And actually, Jim, wouldn't that be the case even if you were using it?
Correct. But more often than not, folks will they'll see a list of things and they'll delete them in their active list. But they may not. If you have a tendency to click on the active list, it will only show active. So when you log in, you may see that it only shows the active. So the items that are in inactive, you may never even notice they exist.
Right, because you may have forgotten about them.
So instead of relying on your memory, I recommend people who have installed plugins that are inactive, they're so easy to reinstall. Just delete them.
Right. Right. And so, for example, like Jetpack is a fabulous plugin, but on this test site, I'm just not using it. So might as well just go ahead and delete these. And I know some of these I was trying out, but again, if you're not using them, just go ahead and delete them. And that makes your, although I think I'm going to activate that one. So I'll just hit delete and click apply. And yes, delete these files.
And I would say that for people who are apprehensive about deleting things that are inactive, unless you're actually going to use that plugin again and you have spent a lot of time configuring it, there's no harm in deleting an inactive plugin.
Right. You can always add it later. So if I wanted to add Jetpack back again, Jetpack is a free plugin. Here it is right here. I could always install it again. So no need to worry there about it. I want to talk about, I know we do have some questions. Let's see. I wonder if I should answer some questions, and then I'd like to talk to you about login lockdown. Does that sound good?
Sure.
So let's just answer some questions, because I know when I have questions, it's nice when not too much time goes by. So Kathy, I'm just going to read some of these questions off so you can delete them on your end. Suzanne says, thank you for the info about that WP DB backup to not use it anymore. Kathleen asks, I think you've already answered this, if we delete paid plugins, wouldn't it be a problem getting them back later? Do you want to answer that, Jim?
When you delete a paid plugin, they may or may not. Again, different plugins have different settings options. Some plugins, when you delete them, they don't actually delete the database tables, the information within the WordPress, so that when you reinstall them, all the data will still be there, whereas others will delete everything. So it's a 50-50. If you delete a paid plugin, the worst case is you'll just have to re-enter the registration number.
You know, I know, so let me just clarify what you meant by some of the tables. So when you install a plugin, sometimes the plugins use the WordPress database as a place for the plugin to store information. And when you delete the plugin, it doesn't necessarily delete that information. So I know with Wishlist, I've had to, on a few of their updates, they've said to delete the plugin and install it again. And when I install it again, all my info was there. So if you've purchased a plugin, then it is probably on your computer somewhere where you've downloaded it, and you should be able to install it again. All right, I want to go just back to the user conversation. User with an editor role for when I do my post. Is this, oh, okay, so this one gal is saying, I am the only user. As a precaution, and this is something I do too, as a precaution, I've created a user with an editor role for when I do my posts. And then I have me as an admin when I'm adding plugins. Is this useful, or am I equally protected by having a display name that is different from my admin username? So, okay, so that was kind of a mouthful. We're going to come back in here to users, and let's just, I think this is a worthwhile. There goes my computer blacking out. All right, now it's back again. So Suzanne is saying she creates a login for herself with an editor role and does her blog posts that way. And actually, I do the same thing versus doing her blog posts as an administrator. Can you comment on that, Jim?
Well, I mean, I think it's a very smart idea, particularly if you're doing a lot of posts. But I think that it sort of falls under whether you're hiding the key under the rock or hiding it under the mat. It can still be, your administrative username may still be locatable via using some other methods that a hacker might use in checking your website. So I think it's a great idea. I would applaud anybody who does that because I think it's super smart. But it's pretty far down on the security checklist of things to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that there's a way to see the author, sort of like your author box.
Mm-hmm.
And if your author box has your admin login, it then reveals what your admin username is. It's kind of like it helps a little bit, but the serious hacker, it doesn't help.
Mm-hmm. Correct. That's a great idea. I would do it if I was doing a lot of posts. I think it's a great thing to do.
Right. So have a login for yourself as an editor versus, and then also have a login as an administrator. And actually what I do, Jim, is I just log in as my administrator, I write the blog post, and then I change the author
Mm-hmm.
to editor.
Yeah,
hopefully that made sense to people. I can demo that if that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
So Rivian is asking, she noticed that the advanced image styles plugins for adding borders hasn't been updated in 6 months. Is 6 months a problem or not? Like, what would be your time frame?
No, I think over a year is a good, reasonable time frame to be concerned.
Yeah, and this is one that I use because when WordPress changed to, I think it was 4.0 or maybe it was 3.9, it got rid of the ability to add borders on images. So this is one that I use. Okay, all right, we've answered that question. Hold on. Rivian, there were errors in that backup because it was too big. Okay, all right, I think we're pretty much cleared up. Let's come back in here to plugins, and I want to talk about Login Lockdown, which I already installed. So I think I need to log out. Okay, so Jim, do you want to talk about the concept of locking down a site with, and Login Lockdown is an easy
Mm-hmm.
one?
Yeah, there are two primary login plugins that are very, very common and well used right now. One of them is called Login, and the other one is, Login Lockdown, and then the other one is Rename WP Login.
Oh, okay. Let's bring up another. Are these both found? I know Login Lockdown you can find in WordPress.org.
Mm-hmm.
But rename. Say it again. Rename what?
WP Login.
Okay.
Try it at WP-login.php. There you go.
All right. Change the WP-login.php to anything you want, and also prevent a lot of brute force attacks.
So both of the plugins, the one you mentioned and this one, do subtly different things. I would say review both and see which one you're more comfortable in using. They're both very, very helpful plugins for security.
Okay, so let's just describe. I just want to big picture describe what each does. So Login Lockdown makes it so that after 3 attempts to log in, the plugin locks you out of your site. So what that does is it stops a brute force attack. And the term brute force attack, that means someone is coming at your site, just trying the username admin, right, which most people a lot of people may still have, and they're just going through the dictionary and they're just trying a whole bunch of different passwords. Login Lockdown prevents a computer script from going after your site that way. that a good explanation?
Perfect.
Okay, and then this is a little bit different. And tell me, so when you here's your site, right? And in order to log in, everybody knows you add WP-admin, and that gets you to this WP-login file. So rename WP-login.php, renames where you're going to go to log into your site to prevent hackers from being able to try to break in. Is that correct?
Exactly. And there's a subtle difference in that one blocks people who are trying to get into the known login page, and then rename WP changes it so that they can't even find the login page.
And can you have both?
You can have both. I believe, though, if you're going to do the rename of the WP login, I'm not so sure you really need to be limiting, because it's unlikely that the random bots are even going to find the page.
All right, so you're recommending one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other, depending on your needs. See, some people, they don't want to rename the login page because they have lots of users, and they don't want to have to notify them that the login page has changed, or maybe they have a membership site, and it may or may not affect the membership script. So it's one of those things where it really depends on your use, but there's certainly a big bonus.
Right, yeah, like for a membership site, unless you started it from the beginning, if you've trained everybody, go to WP-login, and now you got to tell all your members, no, we've moved it. Can we just go ahead and kind of install this and see what it does? Does it let you choose?
Correct. It's right there, at the very bottom.
So it'll create a page.
You then decide what you want the login URL to be.
Right. So you could you could call it My Login, or you could come up with something even more clever. My Login 1. And so then I'm assuming it's going to create a page like that.
And at the very top, it reminds you, bookmark this page.
Got it. So
you can go to the page now if you like. Just click the. You can click that.
Yeah,
link.
but I don't know if RoboForm is going to be able to do it. Let's see what happens. I guess if I don't log out, I'll be okay. Right.
Notice how it changed.
Right. But I'm already logged in.
Yeah, you'd have to log in to see the result. What will happen is, if you're logged out, is it'll basically show almost a blank page.
All right, so let's go to, where was that again? Link checker. Let's find the settings for that one more time. Rename settings. So this is great for the person who's building a site. Only themselves are going to be in here. So this is a great security measure. So it's like moving your back door. So the burglar can't even find where the back door is to try all their different keys.
Right. Instead of putting your key underneath the mat or under the rock, you're actually putting your key kind of like behind the fence on the side of your house.
Right.
They probably can still find it if they look really, really hard, but it just makes it much more difficult to locate.
Right. That's a great, great tip. Let me just see if there's any questions on that. Someone's asking a question, how do you log in after login, lockdown locks it up? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's problematic.
Yeah.
I believe it has a period of time where it'll let you log back in.
Right, and I have heard, like, you just got to be careful. If you try to log in 3 times, it's going to lock you out, and you can set the interval. I think the default is an hour, but you can set the interval. And if worse came to worse, you could call your hosting and go inside, under the hood, and I think you can change your password if you call your hosting company in the database.
Or you can, if you know how to FTP to your website or use File Manager at your web host, you can just delete the plugin entirely.
Right, right.
That's another little 10 minutes of discussion, but there's a way in which you can rename the plugin or delete the plugin, and then that will let you get right back in.
Right. So let me, let's go back to plugins, and I'm just going to deactivate this, and because someone's got a question about login lockdown. So I hope everybody understands login lockdown keeps the number of attempts for people to try to log in, and the rename one just moves the back door. So let's see, where was that? Now I can delete that. And I can delete that. Let's go to, I like to have these visuals up here. Login, lockdown. All right, how are we doing on time? We should probably move on. So Kathleen is asking, because we just mentioned, so let's just clarify this. We talked about if for some reason you're having a problem with a plugin, you can log into your web hosting, go to the file manager, and delete that plugin. So Kathleen is asking if someone can go into the hosting account and delete the plugins, what good are they for security? And Kathleen, no, that's only if someone has access to your hosting account. That's just for you. Comments, Jim?
No, that's correct. Yeah. Just if someone has that level of access, then you have a bigger problem.
Right. So there's people hacking into your site, and then people hacking into your hosting account, but most people wouldn't. There's no way to sort of find what that is. Is there? I don't know
Correct.
how one would find that.
Yeah, unless your computer is compromised or you're using an over easy password on your hosting account, that sort of thing.
Right, right. Okay, so let's see. We got 1 o'clock. We have 30 minutes left. Where should we go next? We could talk about, let me just make sure, did we cover everything you sort of wanted to cover about prevention? And then let's talk about how to tell if you did get hacked.
Okay.
Is there anything else in here? Oh,
no,
wait.
No.
There's one thing I want to mention, themes. If you're not using a theme and you're done sort of testing themes out, delete the themes. It's kind of similar to not keeping old plugins around. You know, if you know you don't want to use a theme, delete it. The fewer files and the fewer extra stuff on your site that you're not going to use, the better. Any comments on themes?
No, exactly the same as plugins. You want to, that's part of the maintenance process, just making sure that you clean things up and reduce the likelihood or number of different things that a hacker might use to compromise your site.
Right. But you want to be careful, like for example with StudioPress, to remember if you're using StudioPress, you need to have Genesis in here. So you don't want to delete your Genesis theme. But, you know, this one I'm not using, so I can delete this. But delete themes that you're not using and you know you don't want to use. You know, if you think, well, maybe I'll use Woo Canvas because I'm still in development mode, that's okay. But once you've settled on it, delete the extra ones. But if you're using a parent-child theme, do keep the parent theme in there. Otherwise, your site will break. All right, let's move on to, let's talk, we talked about change detection. Let's talk about how to tell if your site has been hacked. So this was a site, Unmask Parasites. Jim, did I lose you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Unmask Parasites. Can you talk about what this link is? And don't forget, everyone, I'm going to send out all these links from Jim. talk about what this is, and I ran it before we got on the call.
Well, one advantage of this really simple site, I mean, there are many sites where you can check your website for malware and those sorts of things, but the nice thing about this is it gives you some key information. It gives you, when you type in your domain name and click check, it will, if you scroll down, you'll see that it shows the title of your website, the Novato County Nutcracker. Well, if your website has been compromised, it's very possible that title may have changed. So that's a real quick eyeball of, wow, no, my site looks good, or uh-oh, why am I selling Louis Vuitton shoes? So that is a good indicator. And then below that, you'll see where it says the version of your WordPress. So that may be
and this
a
one
key.
needs to be updated.
Yeah, and it's a reminder, a key reminder to you that the version of WordPress is 3.9.2, and even though that's not there very far outdated, it might be good to add to your to-do list to update that one day. And then as you scroll down, now keep in mind that even though this page may say that your site is clean, it may not be. So
hey, Jim, can we pause for a moment because people
sure.
didn't get a chance to see me actually do this?
Sure.
So if I want to sort of start from the beginning to where if you come to this link, and I will send this out. So there's unmask parasites and web page security check. So what we're doing here is we're just coming to this place to check to see, has my site been compromised? So I put in the domain name and I'm going to click check. But before I do that, Jim, what is the difference between these two?
They're the same.
They're the same. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to click check, and now it's running. So people didn't see that. So it says this page seems to be clean.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean it's only checking the home page, or is it checked the whole site?
Correct. It's, most of the security scanners that you will use are only going to check the page you enter.
Got it. Okay.
And so, as I alluded to before, even though it says this same page seems to be clean, it may not. And what you're doing here is you're scrolling down, and you're just looking at the content, the external references. More often than not, when your website has been compromised in any form, links within your home page will have been changed, or content will have been changed. So what's nice about this page, again, is that it's just kind of a quick visual double check. There's no one selling anything on here. There's no crazy ads or anything like that. It's just a very simple 2-second visual check to verify that everything looks good. So you may want to go here if you have some concerns or someone has reported something odd going on with your website that they didn't expect. You can jump here real quick and do a quick check and at least get kind of a warm and fuzzy that either things are looking pretty good or maybe not so much.
So to explain to everyone sort of what this is, this external references means on the site, Grass Valley Nutcracker, we are linking out to Vendini, Maps.Google, YouTube, Facebook, and I think we have a link for the Christmas theme being used. So when I look here, I go, yes, I know this is our ticket selling processor, and yes, I know we've got a map to Google, and yep, we are linking to some YouTube videos. We've got a Facebook fan page. I think this is part of the Facebook fan page. That makes sense to me. And yes, I do remember linking to the web developers' themes. So when I look at this, I'm like, okay, these all look good. But on a compromised site, you might see links to Viagra or something else. If they, or any, wherever they are sending links out to, so that would be a warning. Can I go ahead and click on Reveal Hidden Spam Links?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know what that does. So what is this?
So those are different words that may have been associated with this website at one point. So I believe you can click the links. Can you go ahead and click in a new window? Click the new lingo click the in a new window to the right of one of the links. Okay, good. All right. So as you can see here, that particular search is not always terribly helpful.
Okay.
It's going to At some point, maybe you had linked off to vistacollege.edu.
I did
really,
not.
Yeah, exactly.
But
very
maybe, could be that maybe at some point I had spam comments?
That's possible. Exactly. And it would have,
So this is pulling up.
But notice that it's not showing, see, it's maybe you did at one point, but note that those are commonly used spam terms. So if you go back again, let me show you something real quick.
And I hope everybody's following what we're doing. If you're not following what we're doing, please type in the question box so that we can clarify exactly what we're doing.
So what this does is that you can type in a term that you think might, this is generally if you know that your website's been compromised.
Okay.
And these items below are currently the most popular spammer or hacker link text. So when you click on one of them, and it does not, and within Google does not say that has been on your website, then you're good. It's basically examples.
Okay, so you're saying I could type in Viagra here?
Correct. And it will then look in Google to see if that word is on your website.
Okay, so I'm not understanding these results.
Note the links. Again, that's because you used a very common term. These are all different web pages. They're all different websites.
Got it.
This is not the greatest page. I think the purpose that this was set up for was that you could click it and do common term checking to see if these terms are actually currently in grassvalleynutcracker.com. And as you noted a moment ago, they weren't.
Right, because I clicked on them sort of randomly.
Correct, and they just came up with nothing.
Okay. Can I click here? Should I try this?
I would.
No?
Yeah, that's just going to bring up lots of complexity.
But this is pretty. This part here that we've gone through is really useful because if there were a link on my site that were going off somewhere else, it would come up in here.
Correct. Yeah.
And then you'd know, okay, there's a problem. So this link is a great way to see if you've gotten bad links on your site. And I just need to mention it because I have talked about it before. Security is also another place, but they've actually made it a little bit harder to find their link checker. So we're not going to go look at that right now. So coming back to our site, right, and I guess I could try this. I should probably try this on a site that has spam comments, but let's see. Maybe I'll pause and see if there's any questions so far before we talk about hack repair. And I'm not seeing. I think we've answered all the questions. Okay, so if you have a question, type it in. Otherwise, let's talk about hack repair. Right? Have I covered most everything?
I think that you've covered everything nicely in an hour. I mean, that's pretty much everything. There's a lot of things you can certainly do, but those are great highlights.
All right, so I'll just put, I hope this comes out clean. Kind of scary to do this live on a call. And I can see what I'm linking to, and it all looks pretty tame. So this is a good check. Thank you. All right, let's talk about hack repair. Is there a place you want me to go to?
Yeah, you can jump over to hackrepair.com.
Okay. All right, and this is Jim's site. So is there a place on here you want to talk, or should we just have sort of a general kind of conversation?
No, general conversation's fine.
Okay.
It's hoped that you won't have to get to this point. If you followed all the recommendations over the past hour, it's unlikely that you will have to get to the point where your site will be compromised, but it happens. sometimes, you may hire someone who is maybe less than scrupulous, and they wander off, and they then come back and either hack your website, or maybe their computer becomes compromised, and that's then used to compromise your website. No matter how many wonderful things you've done to keep it secure, there are ways in which hackers may be able to compromise your site. I mean, this is just the nature of things. No different than, it's possible that your car may be stolen in a busy parking lot. It can happen. So let's just say that it does happen. If it does, then you can go to hackrepair.com, and the phone number's right there, and you can talk to me direct, and I will kind of walk you through the concept and review your site and verify whether it's been compromised or not. Many times people call me and they have concerns, and it turns out it has nothing to do with being hacked at all. And it's oftentimes just a plug-in update went bad or something like that. So I'm more than willing to give you some guidance on how to fix that as well.
Yeah, and I want to mention, and I don't know if I have a screenshot of this, the white page of death. So what is the white page of death? That is where your site looks totally, and I don't have a screenshot, where your site is completely white. And sometimes you might think, oh my gosh, my site has been hacked, but that's not the case. It's often during a plug-in update, the internet hiccuped and it didn't do the update correctly, like the files didn't all get up there. And so then that means your site just didn't get updated properly, so it doesn't necessarily mean you've been hacked.
Yeah, sadly it's not a super common occurrence, but it is something that causes people a lot of anxiety when that does happen, and it's fixable. In 99% of the cases, it's fixable. You just have to go in there and correct some things that were, I guess you could say, made ajar.
Yeah, and I'm trying to see if I can find. I know I have a video on Broken White site. Hold on, let me find this. Okay, I could turn this back on. So inside my classroom in my program, I have a video if you get a broken white site. And so it would look something like this. You'll come to your site and it'll be totally white. So if you see that, that doesn't necessarily mean you've been hacked. You probably haven't. It's just very simple. A plugin or a theme got corrupted during an update, and it's pretty easy to repair. So just want to mention that. Coming back over here, can you just talk about when your computer gets a virus on it? So talk about just sort of clarify your computer getting a virus versus your website having malware, so that people understand the difference between a computer virus and malware. And then if you could explain, how could a computer virus on your computer infect your server in the sky?
Yeah, I mean, I personally find it's less common lately. But if you're running a Windows computer, for example, and you download a virus somehow through an email attachment or visiting a website, oftentimes what will happen is that will install a program on your computer that a hacker will then send information out to the hacker. So information could be sent like your passwords list, which they can pull from your email account, or other locations on your personal computer that you may have saved passwords. So that type of virus.
Can they get into LastPass?
No, very unlikely, because LastPass encrypts the passwords at the LastPass website, and there's an encrypted file on your computer. So the concept of LastPass is it's supposed to help prevent hackers from hacking into your computer and then getting your passwords.
Got it.
So that's why LastPass is so helpful. It's very common when I hear people, well, I save all my passwords on a text file and I save them on my desktop.
Right.
And, well, if that is the case and your computer does have a virus and a would-be hacker sends basically the contents of your text files and such back to their server somewhere, they then may have all of your password list. So that's a simplified description of how a person can use your personal computer to potentially compromise your website. Now, a website malware is very different. Website malware has nothing to do with your computer at all and only resides on your website. And by default, malware on your website can't, generally speaking, unless it's something that creates a downloadable item, generally speaking, a file on your website is not going to affect your computer. So if you download a file on your website to your computer and it has malware in it, it actually can't affect your computer because your website has a different operating system. So the file won't be executable, and so it's safe to download files from your website. It's even to a certain extent safe to upload viruses from your computer to your website because, like I said, they're apples and oranges things.
Right, they're two different languages. You know,
exactly.
The language of your Macintosh,
right.
Mac computer, or the language of your PC operating
right.
system is
right.
a different language from the WordPress and hosting. So
So you can, your website can be compromised through your personal computer, but it generally requires that someone has access to your computer or has installed a virus that scans your computer for usernames and passwords.
Right. Now, it is my my belief that as business owners, we do the little things we can to keep our site safe. But if your site has been compromised, has been hacked, then in order to fix it, you really want to call in an expert. And the reason is because we are business owners, we're not hacker specialists, right? And so if you've got a problem, you know, leave that to Jim or somebody like Jim. You know, Jim is a great guy, and he's someone who I'm working with, so very easy to get a hold of, which is amazing. I loved, like, calling you, Jim, and you picked up the phone. So if you've been compromised, don't try to fix it yourself. Call somebody else. But what you've done is you've got your backups, you know, you've put these things in place, so it's going to make it less likely. And really, the number one thing is bad passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Don't have that as a password, and don't have admin as a username to log in. And then remember to keep your site up to date. Let's see, we've got a question from Joan. Can you print a list of passwords from LastPass as a backup? Maybe not a good idea, but better than keeping them on the computer. Do you know if you can do that, Jim?
I don't think you can. I don't think it has a print option. I could be wrong. I've never tried it, so.
I mean, you could keep a little notebook with all your passwords, but then you've got to be careful where you leave that password list around. But, you know, most people hacking into your site or hacking into your computer are not coming to your house to do it. They're doing it from, you know, external sources.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions? If anyone else has questions, now is a great time. We've got 10 more minutes left. Otherwise, we can end early. Jim, any other comments, thoughts?
Well, I think that as a general rule, if you take proactive measures, like I described in the, BUM, the acronym, if you take proactive measures, more often than not, your site won't be hacked. If it is hacked, like you said, it's often easier and significantly more time efficient to have somebody else actually go through and clean it up, get it done within a matter of hours, and do it right.
Right.
And so that's what I'm here for. I try to help people as best I can. I also provide a proactive service where I actually do the plugin updates, and I do malware monitoring. I do all the things.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So I always tell folks if you can afford 30 cents a day, you can afford to not be hacked. And
cool.
So I do have a service for that. But
cool. I didn't remember that. So Jim can help you if your site's been hacked, or if you don't even want to worry about it, he can help you to monitor
Correct.
keep your site monitored.
Mm-hmm.
Kathleen has a question. Will you please say again the risks associated with using LastPass? I think you were talking about the risks of not using it, but
yeah, I don't believe there are no risks in using password programs that I'm aware of. Their purpose in life is to reduce risk.
Right. Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, I'm going to give people a couple more seconds to ask questions. And again, remember, we're talking about, what we've been talking about today is hack prevention versus hack repair. So the preventative things you can do, backups, updates, maintenance, and monitoring your site, and we've gone through those. I know I've got one more question for you. Oh, we're getting a bunch of thank yous. Thank yous. This was really helpful. There's a formula for backups, monthly, weekly, and daily, and or sort of a way of thinking of it. Can you just review sort of the monthly, how that's different from a weekly and how it's different from a daily? And hopefully you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, hosting companies often will give you the opportunity to, or they'll have an automated systems that will do daily, monthly, and weekly, or daily, weekly, and monthly. Again, it's not, the daily backups for most hosting companies are fantastic, almost always work. But I find that the weekly and the monthly backups tend to sort of be hit and miss depending on the backup system they use. So I would just add to that it's great to have multiple backup systems in place, and if you can put one in place yourself, that you have the assurity that you have backups running and you have a backup, that you create at least once a month backed up somewhere, you'll do yourself a great favor in the long term.
Right. So maybe have your own backup buddy backup once a month on top of maybe what your hosting company is doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's an absolute best, worst case situation. At least going back a month, you won't lose everything. And even like I said, try to keep a weekly backup if you can, and a monthly is even better if you can do that, if you have enough space somewhere to do that.
Right. And if you're monitoring your site, you'll be able to identify quickly, hey, something happened, versus, oh my gosh, something happened and I don't know how long ago it happened. Right, so that's the benefit of monitoring. Have you heard of Norton Security 1Password system? And is that as good as LastPass?
Yeah, I haven't personally used that one.
Yeah, that may be, it's just one person was asking, that may be something for just your desktop. That LastPass interacts with your online, but I don't really know. I don't really know. And let me go over here. And Joan is saying, thank you for making this issue a lot less scary and more manageable. And yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you live in a home and you've got a lock on your door, but you're not worrying constantly about break-ins, right? So you're doing the things you need to do to, lock your windows at night, and lock your front door, and lock your back door, and don't hide a key under the mat, move it to the side of the house, all of these different things. Well, Jim, thank you so much. I'm getting all of these thank yous and compliments in the chat. Thank you for demystifying this, helping us understand what we can do, not being super techy, and then telling us, I mean, you just said you could get a site fixed in a few hours.
Yes.
Which is amazing, versus us trying to figure it all out on our own.
Right. You can spend days trying to work through the process on your own.
Right. And you can find Jim at hackrepair.com and his phone number, so it gets into the recording, 619-479-6637. Jim, thank you so much for coming. This has been awesome, awesome, awesome.
Well, thank you, and it's been a pleasure giving this little talk, and I only hope nobody gets hacked.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you all, everyone, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.